my teacher said, play this with the soul. You already learned the notes, and I wondered how should I do this, because I have such an analytical skills, and something about the feelings is really hard to understand. Acoustic guitars, electric guitars, playing drums. Virtual guitar instruments built to provide the most authentic and most natural guitar sound. And the person came by who is a guitar player, and he said, my fingers is not able to play, and I discovered your software and started to use it to continue to create the music. Forget about everything and just imagine you're this Spanish person dancing this dance and just let it go. And I was captured by this feeling.
Hello everyone, my name is Ray Williams. We're here today with another Meet the Developers series where we try to get to know the people behind the companies that make all the fabulous software that we enjoy so much and that we use to make our music, mix our music, master our music, and so on. Today, we're very, very fortunate to have Maxim from MusicLab, a software company that's been established for a long time. How are you doing, Maxim?
Hi Ray, I'm fine, great, welcome.
And where are you guys located?
We are in Rostov-on-Don. This is the southern part of Russia. We near the river Don. It's that part of the river Don that joins with the Azov Sea and then with the Black Sea.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved with music or computers? Could you tell us a little bit about that story, your early years?
Yeah, okay. We are started in 1992. The Serge, he's our chief musician. At the time he was teaching jazz improvisation in music university. He's bright musician, keyboard player, music theoretician, and man with great analytical skills. He started to formalize, to write a book, to write a PhD thesis on the method to teach jazz improvisation. And he came to his friend Alexander, who is our current CEO. Alexander is a physicist, he's a computer genius, guru of sound recording, sound producing. He plays guitar, he invents different circuits for guitar fixes, etc., etc. And Serge asked him for help to prepare this thesis for the printing. And Alexander discovered that it would be great to make a software from this formalized method Serge devised to teach jazz students, and to create the software to compose music. And then they invited 3 young persons, including myself. At the time I was 18, and asked and offered this journey to create a music, to create a software that compose jazz improvisation, that compose music. And you know, I just started my education in a local university. I selected the pure mathematical analysis. But before that, during my primary school, I was learning guitar, classical guitar. Then I learned jazz theory in high music school, and after I finished the school, I started to select which career I should pursue.
So you were playing classical guitar as a child. How old did you get introduced to the guitar? At what age?
I was 6 or 7 when I get attached to the guitar. Our friends, our family were playing guitar and singing romances. And my aunt was really excited about classical music, about romances, and he said, you know, if you like the guitar, you can start to learn it and go to this primary music school. So it was 6 or 7, something like that.
Did you ever play any other instrument like piano or violin?
Yeah, I played piano, but it was part of the education. I played by score, just by score, and guitar. I also played it by score, it was really hard for me to improvise or play something out of my head. But I felt something really strange, deep, or provoking some inner feelings. You know, when initially my teacher said, play this with the soul. You already learned the notes, you should play it with the soul. And I asked him, what do you mean? What does it mean to play with the soul? He said, oh, you play something quiet, quieter, something louder, quicker, or slower. And I wondered how should I do this, because I have such an analytical skills, and something about the feelings was really hard to understand. But he was able to find the proper words. He said, you know, forget about everything and just imagine you're this Spanish person dancing this dance and just let it go. And I was captured by this feeling, by the scene and this darkness around you. So it was like that.
Was that the first time you got exposed to improvisation?
Yeah. If I may name it so. It's not actually improvisation, but improvisation in terms of interpretation, the music piece. You have to stick to the score, but you are improvising in your interpretation.
And did you find that you enjoyed that, or you could have both? You can have more the analytical, if I use the word sterile performance, or something more dynamic? Did you have any kind of preference?
Actually, I do not remember this, because I started to make some achievements in the area of mathematics, and mathematics started to capture my attention more and more, because you do not have to interact with anybody. You can do it only by yourself. So you have this task, you think about it, you struggle, and then something happens. You have this inspiration, you have this answer, and you check it, and it comes out as a solution, and you're completely happy. So the same spectrum of feelings, but in more intimate setup. So my accent switched to the mathematics. I continued my education and went for jazz theory, but my soul was captured even more by computers when I realized my uncle, he brought this book about artificial intelligence, something like computer gaining wisdom, or computer, I don't know actual name of the book, do not remember, but the book was telling about modern achievements in the computer technology, and telling that we are one step away from creating the general artificial intelligence. And there are some directions in which people are working, including graphics, music, and natural language understanding. And I really was obsessed with it, because, you know, I felt like I create my own world with my own rules, and something, not just world, something living, something actually that has its own existence. So my thought became something real. And this is, I can show to my grandmother and say, see how great it is.
What age are you at this time?
It was like 14 maybe, 13, 14, something like that.
Now, the average 13-year-old, generally not too heavy into mathematics. They go to play, they play football, they go out with their friends. What kind of 14-year-old were you?
I studied a lot. I had friends that played with me in ping pong, and I ran bicycle, but it was every day, ping pong every day, study and ping pong, but ping pong only after the study. So I have all exceptional marks, and it was kind of crucial to be such a good student.
So the artificial intelligence really intrigued you. I could see that. Did you attempt to try to write code in artificial intelligence, or you were just researching at that time? And also, I'm just curious, what kind of computers did you have access to at that time?
We had a special computer in school. It was really something made, I don't know what is a class of the computers. Something like with 16 kilobytes of memory and punch cards, you know, all this stuff. And I remember, actually I have here in my office my first computer. It's a piece of paper with keys from the keyboard, so I modeled it for myself in order to learn the keyboard and learn computer at home. And I went into this class with computers. Often I tried to skip some not so interesting classes in order to be near the computers. So I tried to programming, and it was called something. The first program was called Intellect. It was like question and answers, and something that supposed to develop your logical or mathematical skills, something like that. But pursue this career, it was kind of hard, because when I started to ask everybody, what should I learn and where should I go in order to proceed with this artificial intelligence career, the answer was you better go for MIT in the United States, or not so great option, you can go in Moscow, but still MIT is better. But you know, at the time, one-way ticket to the United States was really not cheap. It was kind of price of apartment. So
now,
it was,
at this time, is this during the USSR or this after the USSR? You're making these decisions.
During the SSR, yeah.
During the USSR, were there any sort of restrictions on the access to computer power that you have, or computer gear that you would have living in Russia or in the USSR?
We had some computers. These computers was not as modern as in Europe or States, but you know, when you're programming these outdated computers, you learn to write optimized code. You learn to use every bit of resources you have. So a lot of friends of mine who was learning at that time now became really demanded developers around the world because of their ability to optimize and to see much deeper into the hardware. So there was an access and it was okay, but there was a dream to see what it's like to program on the modern computer. Actually, in the university we had some even supercomputers. It was available.
Were these computers made in Russia?
Part of them was made in Russia, part of them was imported. I remember different models. Most of them, for the computers used from Soviet era, was made in Russia. It was some of them was original developments of Russian scientists. Some was kind of clones of something from the States. But several computers was imported. But it was later, after the end of the Soviet Union.
You're just intrigued by this AI and you get into the university. So what happens when you get into university?
When I received this advice to MIT and I understood that it's not reachable for me at the moment, I started to think, how should I proceed further? And here we have, in Rostov, we have a really powerful school of mathematical analysis, starting back from 18th, 19th century, from the Poland, from the Warsaw University, and then from Germany. So great lineage of mathematicians and working on the cutting edge of the science. And somebody explained to me, you know, university is not for learning some skills, some engineering skills. University is for changing your mind, for tuning your mind. And if you will proceed with mathematical career here, after finishing university, maybe obtaining the degree, you will be ready to do anything you want. So I agreed and started to learn pure math. It was another story of love and deep sensations and deep journeys into myself and to this world. And looking back to those years and those aspects of my mind, I feel how huge influence it was for me and how important. And I wish I would spend much more time continuing to learn math. Because at the third, between second and third year, I was introduced to Alexander and Serge and started to spend half of my time to this research work. And mathematics, I finished university with great marks, but still I wish I could I spent more time for it.
Okay, so now you've met Serge and you've met Alexander, and how does that happen? How do you guys actually meet?
There was a student in our group, Nikita. He was working with Alexander on some computer business. And he came to me and said, you know, you speaking, every time you speak about the artificial intelligence, and you know, these guys are going to make computer to compose jazz improvisation. They offer computers, they offer some paid job, and this is kind of connection between your passion for artificial intelligence and passion for music and interest in computers. So it was really a great offer, and I started to pursue two careers at the same time, in math and in MusicLab. At the time we had no MusicLab name actually, maybe, I do not remember actually when we got this name, but we called JIM, Jazz Improvisation Melody Maker, the name of the software. And I tried to work on two fronts, but after 1 year or maybe 1 year and a half, I made a pause in my education to continue software work, then returned back, so it was kind of two goals at the same time.
Now, inside of that, so there were three of you at that time working on this?
Yeah, it was five of us. So Alexander, Serge, Nikita, Igor, and me. So Nikita, Igor, and me was developers, and we split projects in three parts, and worked on it in parallel, and then connected these parts. So I was involved in the part called Brain, so the engine to make actual composition. Nikita was doing some system development stuff, and Igor was and making this player part that was performing the composed pieces. And Igor was developing performing part also.
And what's the relationship or the balance between Alexander and Serge? Serge seems to be the person that is the music, jazz, improvisation guy, and Alexander seems to be the physicist side. So how did those two work together to create these products?
Alexander also a guitar player, and he and sound engineer. So Serge handled the music theory and the music performance stuff, while Alexander was handling this sound side of and technical side of the things, and he was organizing the whole structure and providing funds to make it possible.
So what was the first product that your team released?
So the first was this composition part. It was released like after a year, maybe year and a half. It was composing. You enter chord sequence, you enter some rhythm pattern, and the system offers you different variants of the improvisation. You choose one variant, then you continue to interact with the system, and it plays it for you and plays it with the soul, if I may to use this word, because you know, we discovered that when you play a score as is, it sounds really horrible. So we immediately got ourselves a task how to make the score to sound like a real jazz musician. And you know, this program of composing jazz improvisation became program of composing jazz improvisation and playing it in the perfect style of the jazz musician. So the score is analyzed, the semantic elements of like motifs, part of the melodies, etc., marked. And then you have something like 20 knobs to fine-tune all these nuances in terms of time variation, in terms of swing, phrasing, accents, different kind of accents, etc. And it was like a magic because, you know, Serge took some score and took some live performance of famous musician. Then he tweaked these knobs and achieved really close playback from computer, really close to the actual recording. And then he switches the score for another part. And we invite some music lovers or music professionals who know these particular musicians and ask them who is playing. And they, without any doubt, say this person is playing. I forgot the name actually. There was number of models, and these models was so close. So we after maybe 1 year and a half we have this composition stuff done, and maybe after another year we have this playback stuff done, and we showed it in university, in music university. We went for the Paris Conservatory and showed there some people from Paris Conservatory, some businessmen. And we hope that such a huge achievement should be should start some business. But you know, only after finishing these products and showing to other persons, yeah, we discovered that something that gives us pleasure not always be useful for persons around. Everybody is applauding, everybody cheering us up and saying continue, go on. But what should we do in order to earn some money? They don't know, and we even was not paying attention to such a not important stuff, because this is really what's important, this stuff inside. Yeah.
Right. So you were very research oriented company at that time.
Yeah, scientific research for the private money.
So now, how does this become a product?
Oh, it's a really very simple moment when you're out of money. It's really no other option. So we said we was in position when we had no money at all. And the three of us, two guys left because they had to feed their families, and I was in position to work on these conditions. And we sat together and asked ourselves, what can we do from our research in order to make a product? And then a couple of Alexander friends came by and said, you know, you are doing such a great work, maybe we should finance your process of making product, but let's limit it to 1 year. Okay, and we started to make the software called Rhythm Chords. It's the predecessor of the RealGuitar software.
And what was that? What was that product? What did it do?
Serge was really passionate about the guitar parts, guitar music, but he never played guitar. Being virtuoso on the keyboard, he tried to emulate guitar, but he was not satisfied with the result. And when we started to think about what product can we do, he said, you know, there is a lot of keyboard players, and the guitar parts is really important in the music. Let us try to imitate a guitar performance technique on the keyboard and see whether it will be fine or not. And you know, it was kind of easy to implement and easy to understand the idea. You split your keyboard in half. One part of the keyboard is like a left hand of the guitar player. You select chords with the one hand. And another part of the keyboard is a zone when you have different strum keys. You can play strings, individual strings, picks, basses, strums in a lot of variations. And using the dynamics, velocity dynamics of the keyboard, you can control this number of voices, whatever. And then we discovered there is a problem. With one hand, the piano keyboard player cannot select exact chord that guitar player can. On the guitar, you can select more than 2 octaves, but on the keyboard, you do not have such a range. So there was a task, how we should implement this chord selection technique in order for person to not only designate the chord, but to be able to control each voice, each individual voice. How to change this chord that piano player can play to the correct guitar chord. And it was kind of sophisticated engine that we made to make this solution. And we even received the Russian and United States patent for this method of transforming chords. And at the moment we had no sound engine, so we used external sound engine. It was Korg 01W. I remember it very well. Yeah, such a beast. Yeah, and we tried to use our software. In essence, it was a MIDI FX, MIDI processor.
Right. So you sent MIDI to the Korg unit.
Yeah. So MIDI goes from the keyboard to rhythm chords. Initially, it goes in key guitar. Yeah, and then it goes to the Korg, and we even made such a beautiful implementation of multi-timbral playback. You know, when you have this chord hand, the upper voice that you control, it's a solo instrument. For example, some flute. The lowest note, the bass, is bass. Everything in the middle, the chord played by the guitar. And in the right hand, when you play rhythm by the right hand, you have specially designated drums and special effects rhythm part. So you're playing essentially 4-part stuff with only 2 hands. And it was really wonderful. We even have some ancient videos of these experiments. And when we decided to make a commercial product, actually my memory was bad. Before we started to develop a product, we had this composition software, just playback software, then the software to actually interact with the playback, so the person could enter some nuances during the playback, and this software to imitate guitar techniques. And when we had all this, we decided, okay, let's have this key guitar technique and make rhythm and chord, so some MIDI FX plugin in order for keyboard players to create guitar parts in the sequencer. And we discovered that Cakewalk, it was Cakewalk Pro by 12-tone system. Later they named Sonar. And they was the first company to offer MIDI FX API for their product. And we created one of the first, or maybe the first, sophisticated plugin for them. And you know, it was year 2000, yeah, when we built our site, we built the shop, we built the product page, installers for the PC, obviously. Cakewalk was PC-only software. And assigned some number for the price and started to wait for the orders.
And what happened? Did you get orders?
Yeah. There was an order even on the first day. But it's funny part, you know, at the time there was no e-commerce providers, or at least no, there was e-commerce providers, but we implemented this e-commerce processing, credit card processing ourselves. And instead of taking $199, we took 199 cents from the first customer. Yeah.
So you had to go back to your mathematics to fix that, right?
Yeah.
You got sales the first day. How did it feel after all that time to see a sale come in? Did it kind of validate everything that you guys had done? Were you excited? How did you feel?
We were extremely excited because, you know, at this time when internet it's maybe 5 or 6 years old, no, 4 years old or something like that, even the idea that you are making something in one part of the world and person on another part on the world can immediately read it and can buy it and can send money back, it was kind of magic. And when you made something with your hands and somebody you do not know, you do not ever met, buying it, it was really a validation and like a door to the new world, something like that.
You have your first sale, you're tied in with Cakewalk. Did you expand to other sequencers at the time?
No, we actually was not able to expand. We tried to pursue this way actually. We tried to create a VST instrument that will contain our MIDI engine and then will host another VST instrument in order for do sound production. But there was no native support for the MIDI FXs at the time, and this solution was actually developed to the alpha or beta stage, but never released. We discovered that we better try to make the sound engine ourselves. And we have all this experience with MIDI processing, with this really deep dive into the modeling of guitar techniques, special articulations, into this UX, user experience, right? UX stuff, how to use these special articulations on the keyboard, search, spend tremendous number of time in order to fine-tune it, to make it really playable. So the goal was plain and simple. I want to play a guitar part like a great guitar player can do. And we made something like 25, 26 special guitar FXs, and some of them available directly without any key switches or sustains or whatever. Some of them have to, in order to be used, have to be assigned on these additional controllers, but it's really natively integrated as far as it even possible, I believe. It was done. So we had a lot of experience development MIDI stuff, but DSP stuff, digital sound processing stuff, was kind of unknown territory. I learned something from the university. I had these books, but never had an experience, and creating own sample engine was kind of out of our reach touch. So somebody out there like Giga Studio or the software sampler was the only software sample at the time, I believe, or maybe.
Yeah, probably Giga Studio.
Probably, yeah. So it's not in our league. We have to be much more advanced in order to even think about developing this kind of stuff. But you know, the need for this engine to be integrated in the product, the need to move from MIDI-FX that nobody actually knows how to use, that most of sequencers is not supported in most of the sequencers. But if we change from MIDI-FX to VST instrument, it will be a huge leap.
How does it happen? How do you make them move from a MIDI-based system that's limited to Cakewalk to a VST product that's open to everybody? How does that happen?
So it took actually two steps. First step, understanding this crucial need for this stuff. And the second, you had to move your hand up and then move it down and said, let's do it. Actually, we sat and we made the first version that was playing some samples like in 2 or 3 days. There was no disk streaming, etc., but the engine was working, samples were playing, and we connected it to our MIDI engine, and we heard this sound, and it was like shocked why we was refusing to make this really simple stuff like a sound engine. That was the first thought. Then we discovered the sound engine takes a lot of work to be made really tailored to our needs, but the first result was the most encouraging.
It was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
You really just,
right.
I mean, because you can hear what your MIDI was doing to the audio, and you had control of this engine.
Yeah. You know, when you want to play this muted sound on the guitar, and you have this external synthesizer that contains only sustained sound, what can you do? Almost nothing. You can play really tiny short notes in order to have this start of the note, and it's kind of different from the sustained note, but it's not the actual sound of the muted sound, the bridge mute, etc., all this variation of the sound. So guitar is so tremendously multi-dimensional instrument. You have enormous possibilities in terms of articulation and the kind of sound you can produce using the guitar. It's just not possible to make it using the external engine, or it's just is not possible to produce all this variation using plain sample library. So you can record all the different sound, but the major point is how to make this continuous variation in them. And we focused on this in our sampler engine. It's really not achievable to do it in general purpose sound engine.
In your sound engine, have you sampled multiple articulations of the same note? Is that how you're doing it basically? Is it kind of like a database approach where you have a humongous number of variations in the same note, and you would secure or you would call those up based on different scenarios?
No. No. Actually,
I was trying to get a trade secret from you, but you didn't tell me.
You can have the secret. I remember we was at NAMM show in 1996 and had a discussion with our colleague on the stand of our distributor, and he asked, I can't understand. I tried to play the same note multiple times on your real guitar, and I can't hear the same samples, the same sample. So when you use the same sample for the same note with the same velocity, it's not acceptable, because the human ear immediately says this is something robotic, something computer based. It's not acceptable. It's not a real guitar. But the person, our developer of another guitar software, said, you know, I'm playing and I cannot hear the same sound, but I see your sound bank is only 250 megabytes. How you were able to achieve such a result with such a tiny sound bank? Serge, Serge made a joke. He said, you know, we don't have samples at all. and the person was thinking about the Serge sentence for a day or two, and after 2 days he came back and said, I do not understand. Physical modeling, something. What? But it was a joke. Actually, we have samples. We sampled every fret of every string. We sampled it with multiple velocities. We sampled it with multiple articulations, like harmonics, obviously, different sound, mutes, bridge mutes, palm mutes, up strums, down strums, sounds with thumbnail, right? Different articulations, different velocities, but we have a lot of DSP code that is able to reuse these samples, not just samples. You know, let me move story a little sideways. At the moment, there was a software called Steinberg Virtual Guitarist, and we was in email conversation with the not developer, but inventor, the person behind the software, and the software was made from the samples of the whole patterns. So guitar player plays some pattern is recorded. Then they mark pieces of the pattern, individual strums, and then they provide means to recombine, reposition, change the sequence of these strums and change the time distance between them, something like that. So the most beautiful pattern is one that played by the person, and you can vary it a little bit. And the author of this invention said, you know, when I listen for your strum sound, it was during the rhythm and chord era when we used external synthesizer, I am 100% sure that you never will be able to achieve the authentic strum with this technique. When you combine individual sustained notes, you cannot get there as a result a good strum. It was like a challenge for us. So our engine internally, it's 64 channel synthesizer, and almost every of this channel is employed in the whole functioning of the software. So the sounds, we used some sophisticated math to process these samples to separate different. For example, when you have strum, you have some response from the body of the guitar. You have some punch in the guitar. You have some sounds from the nail, from the string. You have some sounds when the string kicks the fret. A lot of different elements, and we managed to separate different elements. We managed to recombine them, and we managed to provide it in a parametric, programmatically controllable way. So in the end, you receive this strum sound, but you do not need a lot of samples, and you have, from the end user perspective, it's not only about memory limitations or memory use. It's about the possibility of dynamically changing it. So you can increase or decrease the time of the strum. You can increase or decrease various aspects of the body, of the peak or other noises. And we have some of these controls available for the end users. Actually, engine, if you would be in position to see what it takes to produce everything. So internally we have like 2,500 of parameters that control all this stuff. And we had a lot of iterations in order to provide it in much more simplified and end user accessible way. I know some of our customers say that your number of your controls is too much for quick understanding what's going on, but the level of flexibility that is provided is really good achievement for us to provide such a low number of controls.
In addition to things like spacing out the attacks of all those strings to simulate a strum and ordering it from the lowest note to the highest note, and then the second strum, up strum, would be from the highest note to the lowest note. All of that is baked into your performance system, if I may.
Yeah. And performance system is devised in comprised, is made of two parts. MIDI engine, when you control how to make it accessible to the user, and the sound engine, how to make it sound realistically. Because if I may provide here some numbers, we have 600 of thousands, right? 6 and 5 zeros, 600 of thousand lines of code in our engine. It's like many tens thousands of human hours of work. And we're really obsessed with the realism and authenticity. Serge playing something and his ear says to him it's not real. He comes to me and look, we should make something new here in order to control it or to make it different and to make it more human. And we're making this feature, we're comparing this feature with previous version, and we see how more authentic, how more realistic it is. And we make such step by step. I can't even count how many steps we've done, but the number of parameters says each parameter is made in such with such a desire, such a need. So we have more and more realistic and more playable guitar for years.
Seeing that you started up your career in this part of the industry obsessed with AI, have you ever considered, or do you use any AI in the performance side or in the sound side?
The term AI is really under-specified term, because, for example, Alexander records a lot of samples. He's playing guitar, or another guitar player playing guitar, recording these samples. You have a lot of different samples. Now in order to create the sample bank, you have to sort these samples by different velocity layers, but not only velocity layers. The kind of articulation makes a lot. If you play one single sample, it's okay. It looks like guitar, nothing special. But if you play several notes together in chord or one by one, you will immediately hear that it's played. It's like a tiny pieces cut and then joined without attention. So you should align all these articulations and classify it and sort it, etc., etc. And it's quite an interesting task for the data science. There is DSP part involved and there is classification part involved. And it's not just textbook stuff. you have to invent it also. So we implemented not only the engine that runs on the end user computer, we also have some process of preparing this. So there is some artificial intelligence involved, but I would not try to use this hype around artificial intelligence in order to push we are based on the artificial intelligence or something, because what I understand as using artificial intelligence in digital sound processing is only starting its industry that only not industry the research direction that only starts to grow, and there is such a thing like a differential DSP. There is a research there and something that connected with neural networks and the way they run, and this involves DSP algorithms and the way to use them, fine-tune them, etc., etc., etc. And there is a neural network-based synthesis, and from what I learned now, this is really young and growing direction. So near them to call something that we use as AI, I would not use this word. I respect these guys and AI. So,
is there a difference between machine learning and AI?
Yeah. AI is a more wide term. So AI consists of a lot of techniques, and actually sometimes not just techniques but problems. So in all times AI was something called AI is the solving of tasks that we do not know how to solve. Once we solve this task, it's not an AI. Like teaching computer how to play chess. When we teach it how to play chess, so it's not AI. It's just some model that works in such a way. But after all these years, last 7 to 10 years maybe, this is very hyped area, and term AI started to use every and then. So neural networks is one major part of AI. There is a logic-based systems, this stuff that I wrote my thesis on, rule-based systems. If you remember, in old times there was such a expert systems when you can speak with computer, Elisa, or you can create a diagnosis based on symptoms, etc., etc. So in essence, one direction. You understand what the problem is. You develop an algorithm how to solve it. Then you implement this algorithm. Then you fine-tune it, and fine-tune it. And this is what is called the first wave of AI. And this first wave of AI reached some stop point in middle of the 1980s. So right when I was interested in it, it was the winter of the artificial intelligence. And then you have this neural network direction. You do not know how to solve it. You do not creating specific algorithm. You just using very simple tiny elements. You provide them a lot of data to learn on, and after learning process, you have the system that can magically model this data and answers. Some combination of these two approaches should be the third wave, and third wave is really starting now. And I believe a lot of great stuff will be once we will have this third wave to provide some real results.
So are you saying that machine learning is equivalent to neural networks? I just want to be sure.
Machine learning is a little bit wider than just neural networks. Neural networks is a part of machine learning. So it's like data science is a huge area handling a lot of data. Part of the data science intersects with artificial intelligence, and part of this intersection is machine learning, and part of this is neural networks.
As a mathematician and a person now who's been involved with software for many, many years, writing software sophisticated as RealGuitar, RealStrat, RealLPC, what are some of the promises that you could see could be delivered by more AI being sort of used in our industry? What can it solve that that traditional means can't, in your view?
Typical neural network usually requires a lot of data to be learned on, much more than average person requires. So when we're speaking about possible application of artificial intelligence, we mean, is there some tasks, is there some problems that at the moment of time the human can solve, and these tasks that can be automated by this artificial intelligence. And when I look in the problems and the tasks, for example, creating proper melody for the chord sequence, or creating the proper chord sequence for the melody, the human, the musician, can do it with ease in different ways. But when you would like to create a neural network to solve this task, you will be really struggling with the problem where to get good amount of data to learn this stuff. You know, imagine that you want to create artificial musician. And the artificial musician goes to this artificial music school, and you are the teacher for the school. But this artificial musician, his level of intellect, not like a dog. It's like a very tiny living cells, and there are a lot of these living cells. So the lack of sense, the lack of understanding, the lack of language, you communicate with some ideas, etc., etc. This being is not capable of. And the third way of artificial intelligence, when you connect this, some logic structures, some objects, some relationships with objects, their dynamics, system that are connected, and you have these artificial networks, like you may see on it like an intuition. So you combine this logic with this intuition, first wave and second wave, and you receive something that is really able to process in a situation with less amount of data to learn on. So in short, there could be, and there is, and I know that there is an harmonization software and there is a synthesis software, but some of them in early research state, some of them even made available commercially. For example, there is an algorithm to fine-tune some guitar affixes based on the sound of the with affixes. So you have sound with affixes, you have some box that fine-tunes these parameters. But these solutions would be really limited. And for example, composition, algorithmic composition, not like we made in our research projects with first wave of AI, but made with the second wave approach. They do something, copying the style, but when you hear this from the professional point of view, you just smile. It's like a toy. So I'm not in position to see that something major would be before the third wave results. Maybe, but I don't know.
As a mathematician, does it surprise you that just 12 notes played over time could be so complex?
You know, I am also a computer engineer, and only two numbers, 0 and 1, creates all this universe. It not surprises. It makes me enjoy the beauty of it. When when you see the software running, and when you see this code written, and when you understand that this is two forms of existence of the same object, something statical, something dynamic, this is most important pleasure and the most important driving force for my part of the work. I feel that something that connects these letters to this behavior is much bigger than me, much bigger than my understanding can ever reach. So it's magic. I have this feeling. So, and with 12 notes, the same feeling, because each note contains some overtones, And when you play one note, you already play in chord. And chord tuned in very natural way when all these overtones like a whole number multipliers of bass tone. And when you play two notes, you know, we have a person who tunes our samples. Samples were recorded in a proper way with tuned guitar, yeah, right. But since you have this well-tempered tuning, overtones of different notes can combine together and provide very unpleasant sounds. So it's really necessary to fine-tune these notes in order for chords to sound proper. And it's really excites me to see how these proportions and combinations provide much more complex behavior and the feeling, you know, the major chord, the minor chord, some diminished chord. I have feelings. I have feelings when I listen just for one chord. Or, for example, these synthesizers with development sounds. I can play something and listen for several minutes. Just something happens not in my logical part of my conscience. It happens much deeper, and I really adore. I'm fascinated. I even can't provide any proper word for this feeling, but it's something much bigger than me and much more important. Like I'm connecting with something from the universe.
Now, when Serge, Alexander, and yourself, when you guys look back at the product, when you look at other people play it, when you look at Guitar Jeff play this, are you happy with it? You feel? How do you feel when you see other people using it?
Oh, it's a special kind of pleasure, because you know the happiness and pleasure making this. It's everyday thing, but when you hear for all this person who use the software and even not listen for the stories, you feel that you are making something important to the other people. And you know, I never forget this scene. We were at some show and maybe NEM again, and the person came by who is guitar player, and he said, you know, I would like to thank you because I am guitar player for a long time. I was guitar player for a long time, and now my fingers is not able to play because of some illness or something like that. And I discovered your software and started to use it to continue to create the music, and I returned my enjoyment and feeling, this feeling back. And you just cry, and it's happiness. So seeing all these people using our software is plain happiness and tremendous gratitude to our customers and to the companies like yours who helping to reach us to our customers and other partners that we make for us possible to create the software, because you know it's a situation of interaction between different pieces of software, and it can be really sophisticated and take some attention.
So, I have to say, I myself use the software. I use I've made lots of music with the software. I love it. I think to me, it sounds exactly like a guitar. I have a daughter. She uses it. She's not a guitar player. She's a piano player. But again, the stuff that she creates on it sounds just like a guitar. Nobody can really tell. So congratulations, really, on making a big contribution to the world and to our business, in that you provided a way for non-guitar players to get a really authentic guitar sound. So really, my hat's off to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Now, do you know who I'm speaking about when I say Guitar
Oh,
Jeff?
yes.
I need you to tell
Oh,
me
yeah.
what you think of when you see Guitar Jeff playing your product.
You know, we have a long story with Jeff. It started like 15 years ago when he came again at the show. He came by and showed his work playing the guitar, and then he started to use our software and provide us some feedback, and then relations became much closer, and now he's product specialist for the live part of our software. And the latest version of our engines, version 5, that contains multi-mode. Jeff is contributor to this multi-mode. Because when I see him playing, me myself, как говорится, I do not play on the instrument in any comparable way. But Serge, when Jeff shows us something, and Serge goes, "Oh, how you was able to do it?" Because Jeff developed so deep understanding, deep feeling, and mastering this instrument that really opens another dimensions and moves this instrument further, you know.
I was at the NAMM show, and he was doing a demonstration, and a gentleman came up and said to him and called me so that I could hear him say to him, "Brother, you're blessed by God himself." It was one of the great compliments, because that was a big producer from Los Angeles, and we actually have that on tape. So he's one of your best, you're absolutely one of your best ambassadors out there, and really knows the product. At this stage, have you ever collaborated with other companies, software companies?
Obviously, we have a lot of collaboration because we build not standalone software on standalone hardware. We are working with developers of DAW software, with plugin API developers, with other plugin developers when our work is connected with them or we should do something. In terms of more close connection, there was some licensing agreements where people license our technology to be embedded in their products. That is not on the professional audio market. It's more about more general markets, so they just need a proper guitar engine and controllable, parameterizable guitar engine, so they license it from us. We are, for example, we bundle our electric versions with Amplitube, so we are in cooperation with IK Multimedia guys on this. Obviously, distributors, and the most important cooperation with our customers when we have constant feedback and when we develop relations, when people spend their time beta testing our software, providing very deep feedback and some insights on how they use it, how it should be changed in order to fulfill their needs. There are several cases when we develop very deep relations from persons who started as our customers and became our close friends, and they contributed to the software, like Jeff or Irvan or others.
Maxim, for those who really don't know about your products that much, how would you describe your approach? What are you really trying to achieve with the RealGuitar, RealStrat, RealLPC series?
Okay, so we have a line of products, 5 products with different. So it's virtual guitar instruments. Virtual guitar instruments and virtual guitar instruments built to provide the most authentic and most natural guitar sound in various aspects. Acoustic guitars, electric guitars, solo, playing strums, etc., etc. And besides authenticity, the goal is to make it available for every possible modes of use. So whether you're playing just keyboard in traditional polyphonic synthesizer mode, like one key corresponds to one sound, whether you're using our software as a new musical instrument. You know, when you split this keyboard in two parts, you have chord zone, you have strum zone. You can play in a way that resembles the style of guitar player. Chord and strums provides you ability to to play real guitar strum parts, and there is ways of combining this strum and melody playing. So, for example, Jeff plays like, sometimes he plays like two guitar players at once. Yeah, it's tremendous. So, in general, RealGuitar and RealStrat and RealLPC, it's several different instruments in one. So, playing guitar synthesizer with guitar samples and guitar effects. Then chords, chord modes, multi-mode. Then you have this song mode when you just select chords and select ready-to-made patterns from this right hand, and you can create in internal sequencer a piece that can be created without touching any keyboard, just mouse, computer mouse. Even we have support for MIDI guitars, and we have even this joystick mode, so-called, when you can use Guitar Hero controllers, and there are people who still use it in order to play. You know, what is really important is all these different levels at which we provide authenticity, because properly recorded samples are not enough. There is very music-specific stuff that connects with guitar. For example, which notes you use to play a specific chord. It's different from the keyboard. Which articulation and effects you use to make an embellishments or other elements of the melody. And then you have this strumming stuff that completely different from what can be achieved on the plain keyboard. So working all these levels and fine-tuning and enhancing it in the way that we done allows our product to provide a complex solution for every possible situation with very powerful and realistic way. For example, rhythm, I would like to name the person who was deeply involved, for example, with creating rhythm patterns. Viktor Konstantinovich Barilov, he is professor of music university, and he is very talented guitar player, and he spent a lot of time capturing this performance of different guitar players and translating into this pattern, rhythm pattern that we have. We have like 1,000 of patterns or something like that. So what we do here in every of these directions, we try to do the perfect result with great attention to details, and we continue to do it. And our sixth release will provide more flexibility, more playability, more realism, and more accessibility in terms of how hard it is to use the software. So we will provide some solutions for our customers to more easy, to increase ease of use.
For me, what's also fascinating is this journey has started in 1996. And that's 25 years of you trying to perfect the guitar. Looking back, would you have thought that you would spend even 10 years trying to do this? And you're still refining. I mean, put that in context for me. How far into the future could you keep refining the guitar?
The beauty of guitar and its possibilities is tremendous, and I believe that we will be able to make something more and more real and more useful for any amount of time, because you know it's already, as you said, 20 years or more we are down this road, and every single step clearly and undoubtedly provides new level of the realism and new level of use or something that makes it more empowering the customer, the person who plays it or uses it in a DAW. So I think we will be able to find new ways for many years forward.
IMSTA has a message of buy the software you use. What do you and your company, how do you feel about that? The IMSTA mission of trying to further piracy education.
Yeah, this really can be stressed enough. You know, it's really, for me, it's real and simple law of the nature. You provide something to the world, you receive something from the world, and this is two sides of the same process. If you trying to gather more or just release more, this is not a natural and healthy situation. You know, when you use software, you enjoy it, you have some result that is useful for you. It's really natural for me to pay for the software, because when you pay for the software, you make the software developers to develop it further, to develop it more. So essentially you are changing the world by paying for the software. You like something, you pay for it, and there is more of things you like in the world. So if you have such a possibility to pay for the software, at least I feel it for myself, it's unnatural to do not pay.
What are some of the things about your company that people might be surprised about?
I believe it's amount of research and development that we spent on the product, and tens of thousands of hours, and I believe many tens of thousands of hours. And another one is how excited to be with this quality, and how many wonderful persons here from with really great music background, professional musicians, very great musicians, how many developers with computer science degrees and really involved with low level programming and other stuff, and many of these persons connecting all these different areas, music and development by themselves. So yeah.
What has been the impact on your business of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Oh, we've seen increased sales after the start of the COVID, and we connected with the more person spending their time at home and taking time to make some music.
Maxim, a lot of young people are watching this, and they are probably like you at 14, 15, into mathematics, interested in computers, interested in music. What do you advise them right now? How do they position themselves to perhaps have a career? What do you say to them?
I think the best advice I can give is just find what fills you, what makes you feel interested, what makes you feel enchanted, what drives you, and build yourself some positive feedback loop. When you do something, you get this tiny piece of enjoyment and you swallow it with great attention. And using this recipe, you will be able to not to force yourself or to make yourself do something. You will, in very natural way, follow this way. So you make something of importance for you, and you driving from this, and driving and try to focus, try to spend let some time for it to develop and know thyself. It was ancient words about looking inside and understanding yourself, and by better understanding of yourself, you can build better life for you.
What is next for MusicLab? What are the next set of development that you guys have planned? You're going to make a DAW, you're going to go after Pro Tools, you're going to make the next Photoshop, you're going to take out Spotify. What is in the cards for MusicLab?
I believe we are well prepared to continue the virtual instruments journey, and soon we will have the major release, and then there is some thoughts about new products, but these thoughts will be our tiny secret.
I want to thank you for this. I know I went a little longer than we had planned, but it was very intriguing talking to you. Thank you for taking the time. I think we learned a lot about your company today and about you and about your motivations and where you're going. So thank you again. Maxim said, send my regards to Alexander, Serge, and the entire team. And I look forward to seeing you again, perhaps when there's a release of version 6.
Ray, thank you for this opportunity. Grateful for you, and I wish your company in your endeavors the best.
Thank you so much.